Let me say this loud and clear: the moment you stop being available to an avoidant is the moment your power comes back home. You've been bending, shrinking, doubting, waiting for a text, waiting for a conversation, waiting for them to finally wake up and meet you where you are. But here's the truth: avoidants don't chase connection, they run from it. And the longer you stay available, the longer you teach them that disappearing is acceptable. Let that sink in. You are not here to beg for crumbs of affection. You are not here to decode silence and survive on mixed signals. You are not here to rehearse your worth in someone else's absence. You are made for connection, clarity, and emotional safety, and if someone can't offer that, they shouldn't have access to your energy. So what happens when you stop being available to an avoidant? Everything changes. Suddenly, the energy you poured into guessing their emotions, managing their moods, and hiding your needs, it comes back to you. You start focusing on your healing, your joy, your clarity. You stop dancing around someone's fear of intimacy and start owning your need for it. And yes, they'll notice. Oh, they'll feel that shift, because avoidance always feels safest when you're stuck in the cycle of proving your love. But when you go quiet, when you reclaim your voice, your boundaries, your space, it rattles them. But this isn't about rattling anyone. This is about rising. This is about realizing that your availability should be earned, not assumed. That emotional safety isn't too much to ask for, that your voice matters, and sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. So stop explaining yourself to someone who doesn't listen. Stop shrinking for someone who runs from love. Stop staying soft for someone who's frozen. The moment you stop being available to someone who avoids connection is the moment you become deeply connected to yourself. And that, my friend, is how you begin to win your peace back. The moment you stop being emotionally available to an avoidant is the moment you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself you've been handing over piece by piece. Emotional availability isn't just about being there for someone. It's about being wide open, consistent, present, and vulnerable. But when you pour all of that into someone who continually pulls away, who dodges intimacy, who sends mixed signals and keeps you guessing, you don't just exhaust yourself. You lose touch with your own emotional needs. You silence your voice to avoid rocking the boat. You abandon your own boundaries so they'll stay. But what happens in that process? You disappear. Avoidants don't ask for space directly. They take it. And when they do, they leave you with questions, anxiety, and confusion. The longer you stay available to them, the more you send the unspoken message that this dynamic is okay, that you'll still be there when they come back, that your emotional needs can wait while they process theirs, or escape them altogether. And while you may believe you're being patient or understanding, what you're actually doing is making yourself smaller to fit inside someone else's emotional limits. That's not connection, that's survival. Stopping your availability doesn't mean becoming cold or cruel. It means becoming honest with yourself first. It means recognizing when your giving has turned into chasing. It means acknowledging that you've spent more time analyzing their behavior than honoring your own feelings. It means choosing discomfort in the short term, silence, distance, withdrawal instead of long-term emotional starvation. Because here's the truth: you can't build a healthy connection with someone who flees from the very thing you need. When you stop answering every message the moment it arrives, when you stop rearranging your emotional world around someone else's emotional absence, you start to see things for what they are. You see how much effort you've been making. You see how inconsistent the dynamic has been. And maybe for the first time, you begin to ask, what about me? What about my needs, my voice, my longing to be seen and chosen with clarity and consistency? That's when everything begins to shift. Avoidants are used to others accommodating their walls. They're not used to someone stepping back with strength. They're used to silence being filled with pursuit, distance being filled with desperate explanations. But when you don't do that, when you finally stop showing up for a one-sided emotional connection, they feel it, and more importantly, you feel it. You feel the weight leave your chest. You feel your mind quiet down. You feel the power returning to your own hands. Being emotionally available to someone who avoids emotions is like screaming into a cave that absorbs every word. The echo never comes back. But the moment you walk away from that cave, you realize your voice still works. It's just been aimed at the wrong place. You begin to speak to yourself again. Listen to yourself again. Choose yourself again. That's where your healing starts. That's avoidants don't fear you. They fear intimacy. It's a critical distinction that often gets overlooked in the emotional chaos of trying to connect with someone who constantly pulls away. When an avoidant creates distance, goes silent, or withdraws after moments of closeness, it's not a personal rejection of who you are. It's not because you did something wrong. It's because vulnerability triggers something deep within them, something that whispers that closeness is dangerous, unpredictable, or even suffocating. Their avoidance isn't about disliking you. It's about protecting themselves from emotional exposure. For someone with an avoidant attachment style, intimacy equals risk. Maybe they were taught that needing others was weak. Maybe they learned early on that love comes with strings, expectations, or pain. So now, even in adulthood, when someone shows up with real affection and emotional honesty, they subconsciously brace for impact. They don't see emotional connection as soothing. They see it as something to manage, minimize, or control. That's why they pull away just as things begin to feel good. That's why they seem more available when you're unavailable, and distant the moment you get close. It's not that they don't care. It's that care feels overwhelming. If you don't understand this, you internalize their behavior. You start thinking, what did I say wrong? Did I come on too strong? Am I too much? You twist yourself into emotional knots, overanalyzing every interaction, blaming yourself for their withdrawal. But the truth is, their fear of intimacy existed long before you. Their patterns are deeply ingrained, and unless they've committed to real self-work, those patterns will play out again and again, no matter how loving, calm, or patient you are. Trying to connect with an avoidant without this awareness is like trying to hug a cactus. The closer you get, the more it hurts. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because closeness activates their defense mechanisms. And here's where it becomes damaging. When you take their avoidance personally, you start adjusting your behavior to accommodate it. You downplay your needs. You hesitate before expressing yourself. You start walking on emotional eggshells just to keep the connection alive. But what kind of love is that? Love shouldn't make you feel like you're too much just for wanting to be close. Understanding that they fear intimacy, not you, can be freeing. It helps you stop blaming yourself for the emotional distance. It helps you stop taking their withdrawal as a sign of your inadequacy. And most importantly, it helps you see the limits of what you can change. You can't heal someone else's fear by being less of yourself. You can't fix their discomfort with connection by dimming your desire for it. When you really get that it's not about you, you stop chasing, over-explaining, and waiting for validation from someone who isn't emotionally equipped to offer it. You begin to understand that true intimacy can only exist when both people are emotionally available. And that includes the willingness to sit with discomfort, to be seen fully, and to stay open even when it feels vulnerable. Anything less isn't real connection, it's emotional survival. Hence, everything begins to change. Your availability should be earned, not assumed. Emotional access to you is a privilege, not a default setting. Yet, when you're dealing with someone who is emotionally avoidant, it's easy to forget this. You start giving all your energy, time, and presence freely, believing that if you just love them enough, show up consistently enough, and keep being understanding, they'll eventually see your worth and reciprocate. But in doing so, you unintentionally train them to expect your emotional labor without ever having to match it. You become constantly available, even when they are emotionally absent. That's not love. That's emotional imbalance. In healthy relationships, connection is mutual. There's give and take. There's responsiveness. There's a rhythm of support that flows both ways. But with an avoidant partner, it often feels one-sided. You become the emotional anchor while they drift in and out of the dynamic at their own pace. And because you fear losing the connection, you continue to show up, reaching out, forgiving without resolution, making excuses for their behavior, and tolerating inconsistency. You hope that your loyalty will inspire their growth. You believe that your patience will somehow unlock their capacity to connect. But the hard truth is this: the more emotionally available you are without boundaries, the more entitled they feel to your presence, without having to offer anything meaningful in return. There's a deep fear underneath this pattern. It's the fear that if you stop being available, they'll disappear, and they might. But if someone leaves simply because you require emotional effort or healthy reciprocity, then they were never truly present to begin with. Availability without boundaries isn't love, it's self-abandonment, and it teaches others that they can neglect you emotionally without consequence, that they can withdraw, ignore, delay, and still have access to your warmth and vulnerability whenever they decide to come back. But when you shift and begin requiring emotional effort in return, things change. Suddenly, your time, your attention, your empathy aren't guaranteed. They become conditional, tied to respect, effort, and emotional presence. This doesn't mean you close off your heart or become guarded. It means you stop allowing people to treat your emotional energy as limitless and unconditional when they're not offering the same in return. It means your love has structure, your heart has boundaries. The people who genuinely care about you will lean in when you ask for more. They'll rise to meet you when you set standards. But the ones who are just comfortable with you always being available while they remain emotionally distant, they'll struggle, and that's okay. You're not here to make it easy for someone to avoid growth. You're here to honor your emotional needs, to build relationships rooted in safety, consistency, and mutual vulnerability. When your availability becomes something that must be earned through presence and emotional investment, you no longer chase people. You attract those who are ready. You filter out those who only showed up because you made it easy for them to stay emotionally lazy. You can't fix someone's fear of connection by overgiving. It's a painful truth for people who love deeply and feel responsible for making a relationship work. When you're with someone who is emotionally avoidant, every instinct you have tells you to love harder, give more, prove yourself over and over. You try to soften their edges with your patience, reassure their fears with your consistency, and patch up their withdrawal with your loyalty. But no matter how much effort you pour in, it often feels like you're trying to fill a bottomless well. Your love hits a wall, not because it isn't strong, but because they are emotionally guarded against receiving it. Avoidants typically develop defense mechanisms that keep intimacy at a distance. Whether rooted in past trauma, childhood neglect, or a deep, seated fear of vulnerability, their walls are not something you can break down by being more available. In fact, the more you chase, the more they retreat. The more you explain, the more they tune out. The more you try to close the gap, the wider it feels. It becomes a painful loop where you feel like you're failing, not realizing that you were never meant to carry the emotional weight of the entire relationship. There's a dangerous illusion that if you love someone enough, they'll change. That if you can just prove your loyalty and demonstrate that you're safe, they'll let their guard down. But emotional safety isn't something you can give someone. It's something they have to create within themselves. You can offer a safe space, but you cannot force them to step into it. You can't do their emotional labor for them. You can't love them out of their fear. The pattern of overgiving becomes self-destructive. You start tolerating behaviors you once swore you never would. You silence your own needs just to keep the peace. You convince yourself that if you're just a little more understanding, they'll finally meet you where you are. But over time, resentment builds. You begin to feel invisible, like your needs don't matter. Because in the quest to heal them, you've abandoned yourself. It's important to recognize that love should never feel like a performance. You shouldn't have to earn someone's affection by shrinking your needs or constantly proving your worth. Relationships should be partnerships, not rescue missions. When you stop trying to fix someone's fear of connection through overgiving, you open the door to healing for yourself. You begin to realize that love isn't about convincing someone to stay. It's about choosing someone who chooses you too. Real connection happens when both people are emotionally present, when both are willing to work through fear instead of running from it. If one person is doing all the work, that's not a relationship. It's a role you've stepped into, often without realizing. And the longer you stay in that role, the further you drift from your own needs, your own peace, and your own self-respect. Letting go of the need to fix is not giving up, it's reclaiming your power. The silence you give an avoidant speaks louder than all your pleas. When you've spent months, maybe years, using words to explain your love, defend your intentions, and beg for emotional presence. It becomes easy to think that just one more conversation, one more heartfelt message, might finally break through. But avoidants don't respond to pressure, they respond to space, not because they want distance forever, but because space is how they regulate themselves. It's how they keep the world from feeling too close, too demanding, too emotionally overwhelming. And the more you try to bridge the gap with your words, the more they reinforce their walls. It's a hard thing to accept, especially when your love language is communication and connection. You think if you could just be clearer, softer, or more available, they would finally understand how deeply you care, but that's not how avoidants operate. The truth is, they often don't even understand their own avoidance. They feel discomfort with intimacy and respond instinctively by pulling back. Your emotional closeness, your honest conversations, even your vulnerability, these things can feel like pressure to them, not comfort. And as painful as that sounds, it's not about you. It's about their unresolved fear and emotional wiring. That's why silence becomes so powerful. Not silence as punishment or manipulation, but silence as self-protection. As detachment, as clarity, it's the moment you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop overfunctioning. It's the moment you decide that your peace matters more than their confusion, that you will no longer compete for the attention of someone who can't even face their own emotions. Silence is not an act of cruelty, it is an act of grace. It's the boundary that says, I'm no longer available to be emotionally neglected. Avoidants are used to being pursued. They're used to you breaking the silence first. They're used to your emotional energy doing all the work while they remain distant and untouched. But when you go quiet, it disrupts the cycle. It forces them to sit in the space they've created, and for the first time, they have to feel the absence of your presence. They have to wonder why you're no longer reaching out, why the dynamic has shifted, why the emotional atmosphere they once controlled now feels different. But here's the thing. You don't go silent hoping they'll come running back. You go silent to hear yourself again, to realign with your worth, to stop bleeding emotionally for someone who won't even offer you a band-aid. And maybe, just maybe, your silence will be the wake-up call they never got from all your talking. But even if it isn't, you've already won. Because you've chosen your dignity over dysfunction. You've chosen stillness over chaos. You've realized that the most powerful thing you can do isn't to prove your love. It's to stop giving it where it's not respected, and to walk away with yourself, worth intact. In the end, walking away from being emotionally available to someone who fears connection isn't about punishing them. It's about finally choosing yourself. It's about stepping out of emotional chaos and into clarity, into peace, into strength. You are not too much for wanting love that is safe, consistent, and present. You deserve to be met with the same energy you give so freely. Thank you for listening with an open heart, for choosing growth over cycles, and for remembering that your healing begins the moment you stop handing your power to someone who doesn't know what to do with it.